Welcome back. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has agreed to assist the Ethiopian government to craft a solution to their impasse with Egypt over the Nile Dam project. This follows a request by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who is on an official visit to South Africa. Egypt is blaming Ethiopia for the failure of the latest round of talks on the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam near Ethiopia's border with Sudan. The country is worried that the dam will restrict supply of already scarce Nile waters on which it's almost entirely dependent. The foreign ministers of Egypt, Ethiopia and Sudan are meeting tomorrow to try and finalise an agreement to resolve the dispute. SABC News Foreign Editor Sophie Mokoena joins us now to chat to us about that meeting today with our President Cyril Ramaphosa, and the Ethiopian Prime Minister. Warm welcome to you. Thank you very much for joining us, Sophie.
Thank you, Flo.
And as a start, you were there this afternoon at the Union buildings where President Ramaphosa and the Prime Minister Ahmed were meeting. I mean, we saw, the kind words and the kind exchanges, the good diplomacy between the two leaders. But what is really the sort of relationship between South Africa and Ethiopia? And I suppose that entails going into sort of archives and looking at the historic relationship to get a sort of holistic picture, right?
I think quite an important issue. The relations between the two countries dates back to exile years. And as the Prime Minister indicated today, it was in 1962, on the 11th of January, when former President Nelson Mandela used a passport, from an Ethiopian passport, to cross the border and go to Ethiopia for military training. And therefore, it was a home for many activists, and you know that he attended a summit there, or a conference then there, that was looking at the unification of Africa, and we know that at the end of the day we had an organization of African unity, and later it was transformed to the current AU that we have, and again South Africa playing a role with the former President Thabo Mbeki being the first chair of the African Union, and also playing a role in the establishment of NEPAD with Bouteflika, the former president of Algeria, with Wade, the former president of Senegal, and Olusegun Obasanjo, the president of Nigeria, and of course Zenawi, the former prime minister of Ethiopia. Therefore, the relations dates back quite a long. It's a long walk.
Now, one of the things that, and I think that's one of our headlines in this case, there was that very important issue that Prime Minister Ahmed raised about the tensions between his country and Egypt, and then asking President Cyril Ramaphosa to step in. Interestingly, he used the phrase a big brother or brother when you posed the question as to what the Prime Minister requires, President Cyril Ramaphosa to do. As I look at that response, I'm wondering to myself, what would Egypt think of this? Would they not be offended? I mean, if I'm telling on first, I'll probably get the ear of the president better. But how do you think that Egypt will kind of see this request that's been made on a sort of public platform to the president of South Africa, who's not necessarily at this time involved?
South Africa has good relations with Egypt. You know that during this crisis, the electricity crisis, where the president decided to come back, cut short his visit to Egypt, he was there to meet his counterpart. They did meet bilateral level, country to country, and these are some of the issues, I guess, transpired during the meeting, because currently Egypt is the chair of the African Union. In other words, President Sisi is going to hand over to President Ramaphosa in February, first week of February, as the chair of the African Union. I don't think Egypt will be offended using the word big brother. Big brother in a sense that I think because he's a young leader, I mean, President Ramaphosa is quite senior. Mm-hmm. It was just a way of showing respect. You saw the body language. The body language for me was that of a young leader who is very very determined to make a difference on the continent, but a young leader who was feeling at home. And it is for that reason he went to town to explain his relationship with South Africa, saying he studied here in South Africa, saying that he received part of the military training here in South Africa, particularly on matters of military intelligence and technology. And therefore, I think he was too relaxed. You saw him when he arrived. I mean, he saw something far away and he pointed at what he was seeing, and the president also responded. I don't know whether when you look at union buildings, perhaps he was seeing Waterkloof, I don't know, or the military bases where he was in South Africa when he was receiving military training. But I think it was a very, very warm meeting.
Can you paint for us a picture of what's going on there around the Horn of Africa, these tensions around the Nile River, the Renaissance Dam? What exactly is the biggest issue, and what's causing this impasse that is so big at this point that it's had to take, a public stage at this point?
Well, like many countries on the continent, Ethiopia is trying to electrify the country. But unfortunately, the source of energy is a problem. And therefore, they have resorted to alternative energy, that is hydroelectric power. In other words, manufacturing electricity using water. And because there's this water, the Nile River, they have decided to build a dam, and that dam is called the Grand Renaissance Electric Dam.
Yeah.
And they are hoping that with that, they will be able to make electricity available to the countrysides. Currently, the penetration is 44%, and they would want to increase that. And like all countries are thinking of what they can do. The population is growing, the demands, the industrialization, the fourth industrial revolution, you need electricity. I mean, we're going to use electric cars, you need that energy. And countries are planning. And unfortunately, Egypt, because they do have electricity, much better percentage, and they feel that this is going to lead to a problem where they are going to struggle to have water in future. So it looks like what people have been saying, the Third World War will be fought around water. In some countries, it is a reality.
Yeah, I want to go back to talking about the sort of the objective of really this official visit, and it's really about cooperation between Ethiopia and South Africa. A number of agreements we saw were signed today. We saw the ministers of tourism and health signing cooperation and memorandums of understanding in their sectors. Tell us about what these agreements really entail and what they're about going forward in terms of cooperation between the two countries.
I mean, home affairs and perhaps internal affairs in Ethiopia, it was about the issue of visas. When you travel on the continent, it is such a hassle. It is very difficult, particularly for business. Media, it's even worse. There's no way I can leave South African border without a visa, except few countries like Rwanda, Kenya. I just get in and out, Lesotho, But it is a problem, the issue of visa. When you talk about the Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, the continent doing business on the continent, you must have movements of people and goods, and you must have free movement of people. And therefore, they have kind of taken a decision to impose a waiver on visas for officials. For now, it's still officials. But unfortunately, the people who travel a lot are your ordinary citizens, tourism, but also business. And I think they still have to do more on that front. But fortunately, in Ethiopia, you can receive a visa on arrival. You can, as a journalist. Even though it's a hassle to get your equipment, you might get your equipment the next day, but you are able to get a visa on arrival. So the issue of a visa, I mean, I'm telling you, there's nothing that makes me angry when I'm supposed to travel, when I have to do visa processes. It's such a hassle. For us journalists, I don't know, it's even worse. It's like we are terrorists, or, you can't just travel, So, yeah, I think it's that. And then tourism, I think the intention to increase number of tourists in both countries, and of course the issue of health, trying to share information and expertise for a better healthcare service for both countries.
As always, thank you very much, Sophie Mokoena, for that informative reporting.
The other issue, just before I wrap up, the issue of Libya. I see now Haftar, the general, has kind of announced the ceasefire. President Ramaphosa also spoke about the issue of Libya, which is very, very critical, because currently that country is a failed state.
All right. I'm sure when we've got time, we'll continue to talk about that further. Thank you very much, Sophie Mokoena, of course, our foreign editor, chatting to us about that meeting that took place today, that official visit by the Prime Minister of Ethiopia.